truly moderate drinking requires a lot of effort and a lot of focus and concentration. It's not easy. I've often said to people that in many ways abstinence is easier than moderation because it's an all or nothing thing. It's sort of like dieting. Somebody's on a diet, they have a nice dinner at someone's home and they roll out this beautiful tray of desserts. Am I going to let myself have one or two of these, or am I better off not touching it because it's just going to get things going all over again? So moderation takes effort, it takes forethought, it takes determination, it takes willpower, it takes up a lot of space in people's head, at least at the beginning of the process. If you're going from problematic drinking or over drinking, attempting to do moderate drinking, it's a project. There's a sacrifice involved, there's effort involved, there's a lot of thinking involved in it, working through the feelings of, deprivation and, why me? Why do I have to go through this process? Moderation can be taxing for some people and requires that you think about what you're doing sort of moment by moment while you're drinking. If you're lucky enough to get to the point where moderation just becomes second nature to you, that you've been doing it long enough that you no longer have to devote so much time and so much thought to it, where you can have a couple of drinks and just leave it at that, well, that's the ideal outcome. It takes quite a bit of work and sometimes quite a bit of time to get to that point. Whether or not somebody's even capable of getting to that point, it's an empirical question. That is, it's to be determined. It's hard to predict in advance. The only really good predictors of success at moderation are things like severity of the problem. Have you not succeeded with moderation, even with the benefit of professional help? Have you been physically dependent on alcohol in the past? Is this a particularly difficult or troubling time of your life? People who are going through career crises or marital crises or health crises, that's not a good time of a person's life to attempt moderation because it really requires dedication and effort. Is achieving moderate drinking or achieving abstinence just a sort of mechanical behavioral process where you have to do some relearning? Or is it more to it than that? I think that by the time somebody has developed a significant problem with alcohol or other drugs, that is, they're modifying their brain activity with these chemicals time after time, thousands of times over the course of many years, it's going to take quite a readjustment process for them to learn how to live comfortably without the benefit and the option of being able to alter their mood chemically. I often say to my patients that you have to be prepared to deal with the sacrifice of losing the privilege of using substances to, instantly modify your mood in a positive direction. That's why people drink, typically, in order to alter their mood, enhance a pleasurable experience, have more fun, feel more relaxed. That's the appropriate use of alcohol. If you've developed a problem with alcohol, you kind of lose the privilege of being able to do that, and you have to learn how to cope with life on life's terms and deal with the stressors without the option of, going down the rabbit hole, anesthetizing your feelings by using alcohol or other substances. It also raises the issue of what other problems, what other issues are percolating below the surface that may have fueled the development of the drinking problem in the first place. These problems don't develop in a vacuum. They don't come from nowhere. This is the importance of being involved, if you are involved in some kind of treatment, of seeing an addiction psychologist or psychiatrist, somebody professionally trained in psychotherapy, in psychological psychiatric diagnosis, so that you can start to identify and address the issues connected to the drinking or other substance use. Because when it becomes a problem, it essentially becomes a self-medication problem. It's using substances as tools to adjust your emotional state and change your mood. Learning how to cope with whatever it is that's coming up in your life without the benefits of chemical mood alteration is a learning process, but it has to be guided by somebody who understands the factors, the emotional and the psychological factors that fuel these kinds of problems and that maintain them and keep them going. And sometimes these problems don't become obvious until a person has been abstinent for a while. It takes a little while for them to kind of percolate to the surface. So treatment proceeds at the pace of life, and these problems emerge and show themselves in real time. And hopefully, if you're working with somebody who's got the professional experience and the confidence to identify these issues and help you address them, you can work through the underlying problem so that you're not left in a situation where you've learned all the behavioral strategies and tools to reduce or stop your drinking, only to have it resurface again in the future because these problems that are lurking below the surface are left unresolved and only to show themselves again in the future. So the key to long-term relapse prevention is identify and address these underlying issues, which are extremely important. One of the hallmarks of having a problem with alcohol is lacking a reliable off switch. What does it mean to not have a reliable off switch? It means that you go into a situation intending not to drink too much, and you have your own internal limit, whatever that might be, that you're not going to have more than 3 or 4 drinks, for example, and finding that despite your best intentions, you end up having 5, 6, or more drinks. And that you've had that experience time and time again, where your ability to cut it short, to stop drinking before you get too intoxicated and you've had too much, is something that you just don't seem able to do, even though you've tried time and time and time again. One of the questions to be answered in an attempt at moderation is, can you acquire a reliable off switch if you've not had one up to that point? Anybody who's seeking help for an alcohol problem, whether it's a mild, moderate, or severe problem, is by definition going to be somebody who does not have a reliable off switch, and that's what brings them to treatment. And how do you acquire a reliable off switch? I would say that step number one is that you have to give your brain a rest from the alcohol. It requires being abstinent, at least for a brief period of time, so that you can let some of the biological factors that are involved here, some of the impact of the alcohol on the brain, subside and recover from that, and then see whether under professional guidance you can acquire the ability to limit your alcohol and exert a off switch reliably, not just on a single occasion, not just on particular occasions, but develop the ability to reliably cut it short before you become too intoxicated.